Sisters and brothers, just so you have an insight into what we do as preachers, we'll gather early in the week and pray and study and reflect on our scriptures. And it's one thing to sit in the church as Mass begins and absorb the wonderfully proclaimed scriptures, only to realize it wasn't the text you prepared. Nonetheless, on the feast of the baptism of the Lord, this still works. We begin a new week today, emerging from a challenging, or horrific, quite frankly, a horrific week for our nation. Before anyone gets upset, though, I do not want to speak today about the politics of Republicans or Democrats, but of the lives of Christians as alter Christus, other Christ in our world today. This is to reflect, sisters and brothers, on the effect of the Lord's baptism on us. That we are empowered to live, breathe, speak, feel, reason, and act as other or little Christ. St. John Chrysostom, in a very troubled and turbulent imperial world in the 4th century set of Christians, the manner of our speech is that of Christ. As we begin this week, we as a nation are reeling from the assault on the Capitol building, the death of 5 of our sisters and brothers. Our nation faces the movement to impeach the president and the impending inauguration of a new president in a much divided nation. We can turn it off. We can come here to escape. But that, sisters and brothers, is not God's way. These are the facts of our world, along with a pandemic that continues to rage among us with devastating effects on marriages, families, businesses, and our economy. We come here not to escape, but to be strengthened and nourished, fed on the Word and the body of Christ, to return as little Christ, to transform the world. As Isaiah says to us, to sing a new song. Today we celebrate the baptism of the Lord, which makes the end of the Christmas season, as we find Jesus at the River Jordan, a grown man, at the place where his ministry will begin. Jesus Christ, the second person of the Trinity, the Word made flesh, comes to John the Baptist to receive the baptism that is for the forgiveness of sins. Jesus, the sinless one, has come to John. John has poured water on hundreds or perhaps even thousands to wash away their sins for their conversion and change of heart. Water has poured down, covered over so many, allowing them to rise ready to live the law of God. In these baptisms, water symbolized the change of the penitential heart. In Jesus' baptism, though, sisters and brothers, it is the opposite. The effects are the opposite. It is His grace, the power of the Spirit, that changes the water to become the material of the new baptism of the Spirit. Like the woman who touched the hem of Jesus' garment and was healed, the water that Jesus touches allows the power of God to go out, to run through the water and through all creation. What was for John a baptism of hope becomes for you and me the very touch of the Spirit of God. But there is more to the story. By entering the Jordan and receiving the sacrament, Jesus is renewing the message of the Incarnation, the message of this Christmas season, that God, out of love of every person, became man to live with us and to effect When Isaiah tells us that God takes us by the hand. Takes us by the hand. Each one of us at some moment in our life, in real time or on Twitter or on Facebook, has been touched by someone taking a hand, a grandparent and a child, a couple in love, a grown child holding the hand of their aging parent. This all-powerful God, who is beyond the world, is creator of the world, takes each of us by the hand in baptism and raises us to share his life, his love, his grace, his power, his word, his spirit. In his baptism, the Spirit of Jesus has come to us that we would not be alone in days like these. He has come to us, taking us by the hand and by the heart and by the very center of our being. He comes to us to love us even when we fail, even when our world is in such turmoil. In baptism, sisters and brothers, we are made to be so much more. We are made to be like him. But we have to listen to this at an even deeper level. This is not just about you and me. Jesus came into our world not as a moral teacher, but as God for all people, for good and bad people, for saints and heretics, for citizens and non-citizens, for Republicans and Democrats, for Trump followers and socialists, for those who assaulted the Capitol, for protesters, for Black Lives Matter protesters, for the rioters of this summer, for Wall Street financiers and Amazon employees, for postal workers and first responders. No one is outside of the reach of Jesus' love and our call to imitate and live his love in the world today. In Peter's great speech in the Acts of the Apostle, he says of Jesus that he went about doing good and healing all those oppressed by the devil. That God was with him. We heard that. The Spirit descending like a dove. Sisters and brothers, he went about doing good and healing. He faced the demons of his day. Some as present as Satan in the desert temptation, others as subtle as the systemic racism between Samaritans and Jews, or the rich man's disdain of the poor and the leper. Our baptism thrust a responsibility on us, a hard one indeed, one that it might be easier just to let alone. By being made other Christ, we're called to take up his mission of doing good and healing. But even more, doing what was most fundamental to the mission of Jesus, bringing the word of salvation to all, even those with whom we vehemently disagree. Words of disdain, hatred, revulsion, derision are not the words of God. The words of the God of love made flesh. Dietrich von Hildebrand, a German Catholic philosopher, who was regarded as the most dangerous man to the Nazi Party in the years before World War II, wrote in his book on ethics, "Only through willing can we change something in the world. Only through willing can we change something in the world, as well as something in our own person. It is one thing to be baptized. It is another to will, to choose the hardship of what baptism calls us to, which is to love and uphold the dignity of every human person. Jesus willed to live the Father's mission of love to everyone, even though it meant he would be rejected, suffer, and be killed. Sisters and brothers, in these weeks ahead, and into the Biden administration, we may have very differing views on how our political system should work, how our economy should function, and the values that our society should hold dear. But one thing we cannot escape is God's call to do good works, to heal, and to gather all in his name, to love saint and sinner alike. Let me end with an image imported from the people of Hawaii, as shared by former Congresswoman and presidential candidate Tulsi Gabbard. It is another way of taking by the hand. Speaking on a podcast recently, she said that in Hawaii, the people work very hard to live aloha. That is, to live hospitality, welcome, and solidarity with every person they encounter, regardless of their race, nationality, social status, politics, wealth, or poverty. In living aloha, Tulsi said, every person has dignity that requires our respect, our welcome, and honor. It's a beautiful image. For us as Christians, St. Francis de Sales, in the midst of a chaotic time of religious oppression and discord, said that all Christians are called simply to live Jesus. That is what it means to be little Christ. That is what it means to live the baptism that Jesus witnessed for us today. In the coming weeks, may we each hear God's call to shape our hearts, to use our words, and to witness in action his love for all, to be doers of good and healers in a time when healing is so deeply needed. Let us take up and will the hard work of baptism in these troubled days. Like Jesus's, may our baptism bear the fruit of being little Christ. Sisters and brothers, may we all live Jesus.
Please like, subscribe, or comment below.